Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Alvin from Dr. Wealth, and today I want to share with you about air taxis. So, why air taxi? Because if you are more aware of what's going on in the US, especially in the SPAC market, you realize that there are a lot of all this air taxi going for listing through the mergers with these SPACs. Okay, so we have seen a couple of them, and I want to go through how this SPAC have performed, and talk about some other air taxis that may eventually list as well. So stay tuned, right? And if you have any questions, feel free to just pop the question in the comment box. All right. Okay, so the usual disclaimer, I'll just give you like 3 seconds to look through. Okay, Ken, the first company that I want to talk about is this Joby Aviation. So it was just fresh out of the oven yesterday. They finalized, they are going to merge with Reinvent Tech Partners, or RTP. That's the stock ticker of the SPAC, okay, the SPAC. And that was yesterday, all right? And the aircraft looks something like this, okay? So that's like the flying cars in the future, right? It's going to be closer and closer to reality. They are still in the testing phase. Or just to explain what this eVTOL is all about, right? It's electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, right? So which means it's like a helicopter, but then they can like turn the blades forward so that they can move forward as well. So they can get airborne and land vertically instead like an airplane, which you need a runway. So it is more suitable for urban cities where there isn't much space for a proper runway, right? So you can just land on the air, on a building, lift off from a building as well. Okay, so this is the RTP SPAC stock price movement. So it listed end of last year, right? As you can see, every SPAC or most of the SPAC will list close to around $10. That's the NAV of the SPAC. As time goes by, you can see the price start to creep up because the time to find a SPAC has transpassed and it's nearer the expiry date. So the chances of them merging becomes higher. So it's like investors are willing to pay higher price as they are nearing the expiry of the SPAC. And a rumor came about around mid-February, right? The first sign of rumor that RTP may be acquiring Joby Aviation. So you can see a big jump in the share price to about 13 plus from 12. Right, so it's almost 10, slightly less than 10% jump in one day, right? And then maybe over a few days, the rumor died down a little bit, and maybe some people started to buy up again. It was only until yesterday the definitive agreement was signed, right? And then you can see there was a lot of transaction that's being done because the deal is more confirmed. So there'll be on both sides, right? So on one side, maybe they feel that this is time to just take profit. So there's quite a good selling pressure. And then on the other side, the buyers feel that, oh, maybe I want to take a bet on this Joby Aviation, right? So they came in and buy. So there was a very huge volume yesterday, right? But as you can see, there are a lot more red bars than the green bars. Okay, so along the way, there are always people who hold the SPAC to sell the SPAC itself, right, and lock in the profits, okay? Because you take a look about this, right, even though for the chart it doesn't look that crazy, but if let's say it started around 10 plus and then as high as it went to $17 in a span of 3 months, that is a good 70% in 3 months, right? So that is actually still a very fantastic kind of price movement that you see in a very short period of time. Okay, so it is natural that some people will take profits along the way. The second company is Archer. So they've announced the merger a little earlier than the Joby Aviation. So on 10th Feb, they are going to merge with Atlas Crest. So it's not merged yet. Okay, so they still need some procedures before they can finally merge, and they will change the stock name, okay, to Archer, right, after the merger has been successful. Okay, so the aircraft looks something like this. All right. So this is the SPAC movement. ACIC is the ticker. Listed last year as well, end of last year, right? The rumor came around early Feb. Okay, but you can see that the interest in this ACIC or Atlas Crest Investment Corp wasn't as popular as the one we saw just now in RTP, right? The movement was a lot more compared to this ACIC, right? But the difference was also that when a DA signed, the share price actually jumped up a lot more, right, to almost about 15 plus to come back to about 13, sub 14, right? Then closes yesterday about 13.52. So it's about the same price as with this RTP, right? It's about 13.50, okay, around that region. But the movement when the DA was signed is a bit different, right? This one like gap down, while this one was a gap up when the DA was signed. Okay, so there's a little bit of differences. Might be market forces in general, the market sentiment, right? Especially the last 1 week hasn't been good for the tech stocks in US. The third company is this company called Ehang. It's actually a Chinese air taxi company, right? And got the news because Wolfpack Research, a short seller, wrote a damning report and say that they fabricated their revenues and the sham sales contracts with one particular customer, and the customer is this Shanghai Kunxiang Intelligent Technology, right? So they did some digging on this company and they found some of the assets they have, they say they have, they didn't have, right? So there's a lot of all this allegation. For information about this Ehang, you can go and go Wolfpack Research, right? Just do a search. You should be able to go to their website and download their report, their short seller report on this Ehang. And this is their stock chart, and it did even better. Okay, so it is not a spec, right? It just go IPO, and it was also trading around close to $10 a year back, and it went as high as 130, right? From $10 to 130. Okay, that's like a 10x in 3 months. Okay, so it attracted probably the short seller report. How can it be so wild when the company is not very well known? Short seller report came out and the share price tanked, right, about 60%. Okay, it hovers around there. Okay, of course there will always be this ding dong between the management and short seller. The management will deny, short seller will accuse. They will have a bit of debate over there. It will take time. Time will tell, right, who is telling the truth. All right. Okay. Fourth company is Blade. They announced a merger with a SPAC, Experience Investment, last year. Okay, in December 15th. The difference with Blade compared to the rest of the air taxi in this presentation is that they have currently operational helicopters already. All right, so they are using helicopters as air taxi, charging customers, ferrying them around in urban cities in US, even in India. They have some operations over there as well. But they are also seeing the trend that eventually it's going to be the eVTOL, and they are going to swap out the helis for this vertical takeoff aircraft in 2025. Right, so that this SPAC merger or this listing is to raise some money to do so, right, towards the direction. Okay, and this is the EXPC share price movement. Same thing, didn't have much interest on this SPAC even until the DA was signed. There was a slight jump, but it didn't even hit $13 like RTP of ACIC. And it only took more time for it to really go up over time. I think it was helped by the overall interest in air taxi, right? As more and more air taxi get listed, investors started to look at this industry, right? Like what we are doing right now. Okay, we are discussing about this industry and its prospect. Okay, going forward, and it closed at 16.50. So it is per share basis, right? It's still more expensive than the other two air taxi we've seen just now. Okay, the fifth one is this Lilium. It's not merging yet. Okay, no target spec that's been identified, so it's just at the rumor stage that they are going to merge. Okay, so I think eventually they would. Okay, because so far all the rumors on all these mergers and acquisition has been very accurate, right? It's just a matter of time the announcements will come out. Okay, but you just don't know which spec, and there are many specs out there. There are like close to 700 specs at this point in time in the US alone. Okay, this Volocopter, and this is this is based closer home to Singapore. They completed a flight in Singapore last year, right? You can see the backdrop at Marina Bay Sands, and I guess some of you have seen this in the news. And they're saying to launch the service in 2026, okay, in Singapore. Right, so this is the current state of air taxi development. Okay, air taxis are not new, right? Blade and another company called Skyway are already operating. They are mainly using helicopters. Skyway uses some propeller planes, right? Longer distances. Okay, it is already in operations, right? But electric air taxis and the vertical takeoff and landing aircrafts for air taxis are new. Okay, so that is the latest development. Just as our cars are going more electrified, now they are looking at flying cars, okay, that are electrified as well. So things are moving pretty fast, right? It's not just on the roads, okay, it's also in the skies. Then the question comes about, right, who is the target audience? Who will use these air taxis, okay? So at this point in time, I would say that, mainly it is reserved for those important individuals where the time saved is more valuable than the cost of the flight, because all this flight is not cheap, right? And it allows them to skip traffic, take a more direct route, and sometimes they can move from city to city, right, where the distance is longer, and driving is going to compound. The time to drive is going to compound with the distances. And currently, I took this from Skyway. I don't know about Blade, right? Maybe it's cheaper. I'm not sure, but this is Skyway. Just to have a reference of the price, it costs about $1,000 to $3,000 for a 1-2 hour flight between cities. Okay, so you think about this, right? That means that not the mainstream or the masses would be able to afford or have a reason to take all this air taxi, right? Would you go and pay a few $1,000 just to go from point A to point B, right? I do think that as this industry mature, the electric air taxi may be able to bring down the cost of the flight. And when that happens, then maybe more of the passengers can afford it, right, and make more sense to take this air taxi. But at this point in time, it's still too early to see what kind of business model this industry will eventually gravitate towards. So there, just a summary of the companies that we have seen so far, right? The 6 of them, okay, and I also wanted to give you some more details on each of them. Right, so Joby Aviation is going to merge with RTP, the SPAC, and it has the highest valuation compared to the rest at 6.6 billion post-merger. Okay, 6.6 billion. The investors have been companies like Uber, Toyota. Reid Hoffman is the RTP founder, and he will be joining the board on Joby Aviation, right? And he's also a founder of LinkedIn. Baupost, this is the famous value investor, Seth Klarman, which I was quite surprised that he's involved in this because this is not your typical value stocks that value investors would like. So it was a surprise. And Archer, okay, Archer is merging with ACIC. Valuation post-merger is about 3.8 billion, slightly above half of Joby Aviation. Right, Greycroft is a VC. United Airlines, okay, probably the only airline that I see that is involved in this air taxi among these companies. Right, Stellantis, this is a European company. Ehang, already listed, okay, by the ticker EH, about $3 billion market cap. This is market cap. That means prior to the crash, the market cap was probably closer to what Joby Aviation valuation, post-merger valuation is. GGV Capital, VC, right? Zhen Fan is from China. Okay, so a lot of Chinese backers there. Blade is merging with EXPC SPAC. Okay, valuation not very high. Post-merger is sub $1 billion. Airbus, a aircraft manufacturer, right, and social capital Hedosophia, a SPAC as well. Okay, is investing through PIPE. Okay, private investment into public entities. Okay, when this SPAC merger is being done, right? So they raise a PIPE round as well. KSL Capital, another I think it's a private equity if I'm not wrong. Lilium. Okay, not yet of a SPAC merger. Last valuation was $1 billion. Tencent is one of the famous backers of Lilium, right? The rest not so prominent. Okay, Volocopter is still private. Totally no news about any SPAC merger. Probably because still very small. The last round valued them about actually it's about 220 million to 250 million, but round out to about 0.3 billion. Okay, so you have Daimler, Geely, a lot of the car companies, all right, and some of the other well-known names as well. Okay, so this is what it is right now, and you can see that there is competition, and the backers of all these companies are not small either, right? So it is not easy for to pick a winner at this point in time, right? I totally have no visibility, all right, and that is usually the case when you are looking at very emerging kind of technology, right? Because you are creating a new market or you're stealing market share from existing market, okay, but with a new service, okay. Usually it's very hard to tell who is going to win, right? And everybody is pouring money, okay, and some of these companies will eventually cease to exist or they'll merge with other competitors. All right, so we shall see what's going to happen next. So I would say that it's still early in electric air taxi. Okay, demand yet to be proven, right? And the business model is also not sure what kind of model is going to be, right? Is it going to be like Uber, like a platform? How are you going to pay the pilots, right? How are you going to train them? A lot of all these things and regulations, right? Because you're flying in a very congested urban city, and if you crash, you're gonna hit somebody right down the road. So a lot of things have not been straightened out, right? Still, a lot of developments have yet to be seen. Okay, but of course, if you're right early, that's how you make a lot of money as well. Okay, but it's very hard to be right very early. Okay, so I would see this as a high risk investment. If you're interested in this air taxi, and you can treat this as like a long shot bet, you know, just like a VC. Okay, that means you put maybe not such a big amount, diversified widely, right? So that, you know, if you just hit one jackpot down the road, right, it's not that bad. Okay, but be prepared that, you know, you might lose majority of your bets on this kind of emerging technologies. Okay, so the other good thing is that why we even have this conversation is because all this air taxi has become available for retail investors because they have gone listed via all these specs, right? So prior to all these specs, it's probably almost impossible for any retail investor to get a piece of such emerging technology, right? So I know, you know, specs have been very hot. A lot of people are on on both sides, right? Either you support or you really hate the specs. Okay. Definitely the risk is higher, right, as compared to a normal stock that is more matured in terms of its business and company operations. All right. Without specs, I don't think all these air taxis are even in a financial state to list by themselves. Okay, so it has opened up doors for retail investors. All right. So I hope this can give you a better idea what is going on, because I thought that, you know, recently there's a spate of all these IPOs of these air taxis. Some of you might be curious to know about what is this all about and if there's any investment opportunities. All right. Okay, thank you for watching, and I will just end here. Right. Cheers.